Hey, how's it going, everyone? Carlo here from All You Can Board. As always, I'm here with my cousin Dylan, and today we are doing a video called 10 Games We've Cooled On. So we're basically going to be we've each picked 5 games, and we specifically have picked games that we used to like a lot more than we currently do. So this doesn't necessarily mean that we don't like the game anymore or that we still do, whatever. The whole point is we just wanted to pick the games that have the widest discrepancy between our an opinion we held on it in the past compared to how we feel about the game now. So we've sort of very loosely ranked them. I think the games, as we get further to the end of the video, those are going to be the games that have the biggest discrepancy, where we've really cooled. Our opinion has lessened over time.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we'll just kick it off right there. I'm going to throw it to you to make that first pick.
All right. So the first one I'm going to talk about is I will preface this by saying there is a minuscule chance that I might, even though I've cooled, I might warm again.
Yeah.
But
yeah, these are by no means full, this isn't a full review or final opinion.
Yeah, but as of right now, I've definitely cooled. I just haven't played this game a lot, so it could change. I don't think it will, though, and that is Winter Kingdom. So the reason I'm putting this on here already, even though I think we've only played like 2 or 3 times, is because I've played. So the first time I played Winter Kingdom, I was super impressed, and it was mostly because here's a game that's taking a game I love, Kingdom Builder, and expanding on it, adding a bunch of exciting new abilities and ways to interact with the board, and just like new, and it was just really exciting, and I enjoyed that first session. The second session it didn't feel like it was a worse or different session than the first time. It felt like we are playing another game of Winter Kingdom, and for some reason it just hit me more in that session because I played Kingdom Builder recently a bunch on Board Game Arena, that I gravitate more to what Kingdom Builder does and the simplicity of it, and like maybe because I'm more familiar with the strategy or whatever, that I'm finding Winter Kingdom just, there's too much going on for that type of game that I'm sitting down to play. If I'm sitting down to play that, I'm wanting the quicker, like more streamlined, tighter Kingdom Builder experience than I am this elaborate one with Winter Kingdom with all these extra abilities. Like, as cool as that is, I feel like there's enough games I've played that have have expanded in those kind of ways and added in a bunch of different abilities and ways to interact with the board and all this stuff, to think that that's not what I want from the Kingdom Builder
system or whatever, yeah.
So it's not so much that it's a bad game. It's not. I think for a lot of people it'll be like a really enjoyable game, one that they might even play more than Kingdom Builder. But for me, after playing it that second time, it would take a really special session for me to all of a sudden be like, oh, actually no, now I'm flipping again. Like, for me now, I would just much rather sit down and play Kingdom Builder. And I know we differ even on our opinions of Kingdom Builder now, somewhat based on just having how much we've played it. But for me, Kingdom Builder is always going to be a game that I really enjoy going back to, and like I would always agree to a session, have a good time. Whereas Winter Kingdom, I feel like I could see myself being like, I just don't want to dedicate that much time to playing it. Would you play Kingdom Builder instead? Right. You know what I mean? So that's where the cooling is happening for me, I guess. It's because of the comparisons to Kingdom Builder.
That's fair. I will say the second time we played it was I think a good 2 or 3 months after the first time, and I had to reteach the game to you as well as teaching it to Braden. Yeah. Not like, I can't really disagree with your opinion on this, because I've felt the same too. I think I've enjoyed Winter Kingdom more than you, and I think I'm leaning more towards, like, I do think I'm going to ultimately like it more than Kingdom Builder. Right. But I would be lying if I said that I wasn't a little bit disappointed with that second session as well. I think after we had that first one under our belt, I was expecting to already feel like I had a better grasp of what was going on. And in the second one, I still felt pretty overwhelmed. Yeah. And how many more plays is it going to take for that overwhelming feeling to dissipate and for it to feel the way we do when we play Kingdom Builder? It's like, hey, I know what I'm doing now, and now I can really focus on making those clever plays instead of feeling like I'm just trying to grasp with the rules, basically. So I could say a lot more, but we'll eventually do a Kingdom Builder versus Winter Kingdom video, really comparing them in depth. And I'm actually even more curious to do that now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hearing your opinions. So we'll have to play a bunch more Winter Kingdom soon. Yeah,
so that's Winter Kingdom, my first one.
Cool. All right, my first pick is going to be Aeon's End. So this is a cooperative deck building game for 1 to 4 players. It was probably one of the first, not like the first 4 or 5 games I bought, but it was probably in the first 10 or 12 games I ever bought for my collection. And for a long time, it was definitely a top 10 game for me. Like for years and years when I first had it, I loved Aeon's End. I'd play it all the time. I've talked about it in detail and why I got rid of it in one of my curating my collection videos. I did recently part from it with it from my collection. And part of that is just that it's the type of game where once you see a lot of what there is to see, there's just less incentive to go back.
Right.
I'm guessing you probably feel a similar way to an extent with Marvel Champions, and if they weren't always releasing new packs, like if you just bought, let's say, the starter set and you played through each of the heroes and you beat all the bosses or whatever, after a while you'd feel less incentive to keep playing with the same heroes and going back. And maybe not. I shouldn't speak for you because it's
on my if just solo, and if I wasn't getting any new cards and I'd already crafted my decks, like I could see myself being like, where's my incentive to come back and just play this villain again? If I'm bringing new people in that haven't played before, like,
for sure,
I haven't interacted with like me doing a 2-player game with these 2 heroes, sure. I feel like because there's so many heroes in the game, there's more like variety.
Yeah. But I mean, like if you were to play as like Spider-Man and beat Green Goblin or whatever, you wouldn't be like next week being like, oh, I'm gonna pick Spider-Man again and play against Green Goblin again. Yeah. And that's just the essentially why I cooled on Aeon's End, because I had it for so long. I mostly played it solo. I played it quite a bit with 2, 3, and 4 players, but I mentioned in my Curating My Collection video, I think it works much better as either a solo or 2-player. I don't really like it as much as a 3 or 4-player game. Wasn't getting to the table as much, and it just felt like I had seen almost everything there was to see, and it got to the point where, you know, there's some additional barriers with like the setup is very long, the teardown. You can lose really early on in the game, and then you're like, well, I have to reset up, but I might not want to set up with the exact same market cards and the same thing, because if I lost, maybe I want to try something different, but maybe you played for 15 minutes to lose to now spend another 10 minutes, 15 setting up the next thing. It's just a lot, and it felt like over time the experience was becoming less and less novel. So I have a lot of respect for it. I think it's a really well designed game, but now it's nowhere near my top 50. So I've just cooled on it just because I've spent a lot of time playing and I really enjoyed my time with it. But yeah, it just doesn't have a whole lot left to offer.
That's fair. I've only played it a couple times, so I would still like, I'm interested to like play it again, but it's never one that I've been like eager, like I need to play this and suggest it. Or whatever.
And it for a little bit it gave me some extra life. I got some extra life out of it because I bought an expansion that came with some new mages, some new bosses, but then I tried those, beat them, and then it was like I didn't want to keep holding on to this game to buy more expansions and more expansions. I just thought, I've seen what I have to see from the system, so I decided to move on. But yeah, great game, and if you haven't tried it, and especially if you're into deck building, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of cool stuff that other games don't do. That is Aeon's End.
Sweet. All right.
And there's a newer version coming out this year, I think, called Astro Knights, or maybe it's next year, which is like a slimmed down version with a slightly different theme.
Cool.
So if anyone wants a more approachable version, check out Astro Knights.
Right on. All right, so the one I'm going to talk about next is one that I have really cooled on because I don't like this game anymore. And it's interesting because I don't know if I've actually, I realized as I was picking this, I was like, I thought this for a while after playing it a few more times on BGA, after I also haven't played the physical version. And I don't think we've actually had the conversation. So you might be caught off guard that I don't really enjoy this game much anymore. And that is Nidavellir.
Oh, no, you told me a while ago. I do remember you mentioning that you had cooled, or that you had thought like, didn't see what was all that special about it, kind of thing.
So, you know, and I know what it is. So when I first played this game, I was and I still do, I really like the upgrading your coins. That is my favorite part of the game. And I think the first time I played especially, I was so caught up in the novelty of that and how much I enjoyed that mechanic. And there was still other stuff that I thought was cool about what was going on with like the is it dwarves? Are they all dwarves? There's like the purple dwarves and the green dwarves, and you know the special characters that you can
the heroes
the heroes. That I think I was so distracted by the coins and the other stuff, I was just like, oh, it's good, it's fine, like this is a great game, I like it a lot. And the more I've played it on BGA especially, the more I just realized that there's nothing inherently like bad about it. There's nothing that's like wrong. It just for whatever reason, I'm just not having fun playing it. I even the coin aspect, like I've gotten over, like it's still a novel thing. I still like it, but it's no longer just distracting me from the things that I just am not enjoying. And it's hard for me to even pinpoint like what it specifically is. Maybe it's because, you know, that set collection aspect is I've played it in so many games that now I'm just not finding myself drawn to the way that Nidavellir does it. Or I don't even quite know. I just know the last few times we've played, I have not enjoyed my sessions of it, and I haven't been like, oh, like maybe this was just a bad game or whatever. And I think part of it is too, I don't like that there's like the scores are so ridiculously high and there's such variety. I do like it in games where like if we play similarly well, that our scores reflect that and are closer, because then we can look and be like, oh, you beat by 1 point because we both played so efficiently. Whereas I find that like you can have a close game in Nidavellir and yet you can still have like a 20 or 30 point gap or whatever it is, because that's just the way it is, and it's harder to differentiate that. It feels a little bit worse when you've lost by 30, even though it might be that really it was like one
You're
or two
only like
moves.
5% behind or whatever.
So there's just a few things about it that like it's not one of those games where I can be like, here's what's bad about it, here's why I don't like it. It's more just that the sum of its parts and everything no longer interests me in the way that first game did, and I think it mostly was that I was being distracted by how much I really did like that upgrading coin system.
Okay. Yeah. How do you feel about the aspect of drafting a card to go in drafting something that goes into your biggest column already because it's going to kind of exponentially give you points, versus drafting what you don't have to make a line of 5 to get a hero? Like, do you like that trade-off of like, technically I'm really getting a lot of orange points, and taking that 2 orange would really multiply, but if I get this, I get to get a hero, which can change those decisions. Is that something you do or don't like about the game?
The way you describe it, like, makes it sound like, oh, like there's all these interesting decisions and everything with it, which for sure there are sometimes, but at the same time when I've played it, the drafting aspect I liked the first time I played, but I feel like we've played enough games that have drafting in it that it no longer is one of those things where I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm having fun, but I also just like it better when it's done in these games, or I find the drafting more interesting in these games. Ultimately, the decisions of like, yes, like how am I going to access these heroes compared to like, yeah, this will get me that hero, but this is also just a better thing for the set I have going. Like, yeah, it's fine, but also tons of games do that, and I find that I've just enjoyed the other games that have been doing that more, or they've been more memorable, or whatever the case may be.
Fair enough.
Whereas for whatever reason in Nidavellir, like, I've never been intrigued by the same things that like you and Braden are being intrigued by. Like the things you guys are talking about like having to make this decision between these two. I've just been like, yeah, I make that same decision, and even if it works out in my favor, I'm just like, great. Like I don't know. I don't. Fair it's enough. Hard. It's hard. I know part of it maybe. I was gonna say part of it is the theme, but I don't think it is either. Like I like the theme. Like I don't really know. Like for whatever reason, something about the sum of those parts for that game just no longer resonates me. It doesn't resonates with me. It doesn't get me excited. And when I'm playing, I'm not having that much fun with it. And I'm sure if I really dug into it, I could try to figure out what that reason is. But for some reason, it's just no longer like something that's fair. I'm excited about.
I'll say I've cooled on it a little bit. Like I think I liked it a lot when I first played it. I still enjoy it quite a bit, but now that a bit of the novelty has worn off, like you said, with the coin upgrading and even just the way that you acquire the heroes, like I still think it's a great game. I still enjoy it quite a bit. I do think the Thingvellir expansion makes things a little more interesting without complicating the rules by giving you, when you win the bid, you can either pick the first one from the tavern, or you can pick one of those items or people from the, like a mercenary from the other spot. So there's some interesting stuff there, but that's totally fair.
All right, that's mine.
Nidavellir. Okay. All right, my next one up here is a game called Seasons. This is one I've only ever played it on Board Game Arena. I've only played the digital version, but this is a game I tried for the first time maybe 3 years ago or so. And I remember when I tried it, and it's the only game I've played by this designer, I think Regis Bonasse. He's also done a game called Lords of Zidit, which is also on Board Game Arena, that also sounds really interesting. And I've started to realize that this guy, before I get into the game, it strikes me as this guy has really, really amazing ideas, but it feels like when he designs a game, the development side, whichever company is publishing or whatever, seems to have let him down in terms of, at least that's what it applies with Seasons, because it sounds like such an interesting game. I really wanted to love this game, and the first time I played it, I did. And I remember thinking, I might end up buying this game one day. This could be a game, and it has the feel of a game where, because it's so based on this intricate deck of very like unique cards, it has that feel of games like Race for the Galaxy, Res Arcana, where you want to explore all these different card combinations. You feel like I could play this game so many times just to see everything you can do with these. The basic way the game it works in, I think 3 or 4 rounds, and you're basically drafting cards at the start of the game. You basically do a draft with this big deck of cards, and there's cards that help just you, but then there's cards that also can play off of your opponents. once you've done the draft, you have to choose. I think you get 9 cards, and you choose 3 of those cards go in the first era, 3 go in the second era, and 3 go in the third era. So you start the first era with only those first 3 cards. So you want to put the better early game cards in there, and then as the game goes on, you get to like pick up your second era cards and pick up your third era cards. So the draft and putting cards into the era is already like a super important early game decision where like that's going to determine so much of your strategy.
Yeah.
And even, I love drafts.
Yeah.
Agricola drafting before the game, Res Arcana. So like this spoke to me so much, but after playing, every time I've played the game, I've enjoyed it a little bit less. And part of it is, I think, you're also like drafting dice that give you these resources that you use to actually, you spend the resources to play cards and stuff like that. But one of the main ways you get points is as the seasons change, there's this little dial that kind of goes around, and the different resources are worth, like you can convert resources into just points.
Okay.
And throughout the game, if they fluctuate, like one round yellow might only be worth 1 point, but the next round it might be worth 3 points. So you're waiting for the seasons to be in the most profitable, you're trading in your resources for points when they're in the most profitable season kind of thing.
Right.
While also taking advantage of when you're playing cards, and on your turn you're either playing card or using something in play already. So it's got kind of this tableau building thing. It's like, even describing it now, I'm like, is the game better than I think? But part of it is that some of the cards just aren't particularly interesting. And because so many of the points come from that conversion of resources into points, the cards ended up feeling like they get a bit lost in the shuffle for me.
Right.
It felt like even when I was doing better and better playing cards, I was losing to people because of the efficiency of just converting this into that, and that was the least interesting point of the game to me. Is just like, okay, I'm just going to convert this into points when it is most valuable,
right.
And then whenever I can, I'll also play cards. So it seemed like there was a lot of potential there. And again, when I played it, I remember thinking like, oh man, Dylan would love this game too. Like, card game, all these unique cards, there's a draft. Like, it just sounded totally up our alley. But I'm now at a point where like I don't even have the desire to play it on BGA anymore. I showed it to a friend recently to see like maybe this will kindle my interest in the game or whatever, and he was like, yeah, it was fine, and I was like, no, you're right, it is just fine. And it's a shame. I feel like I want to like the game a lot more than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard so much about it, and I've heard it like I'm pretty sure on BGA it was like one of the more popular ones being played for a while. Yeah, never looked into it more than that. Never played it myself, and I remember you telling me you played it, and now I feel like I have less incentive to even go to try it out.
And like again, it's not like I think it's a bad game, but like I went in originally thinking like this could be like a 9 out of 10 game, like after a couple more play, and now if I had to rate it, it's probably like around a 6 or a 7, just in the sense that like so it's fine. I would happily, like, if someone wants to play it, I would never turn down a game of it, but I definitely won't buy a copy, and I'm never going to be the one pushing to play it again, even on Board Game Arena. So
got it.
Yeah, that is Seasons.
All right, mine. This one might be the one I get the most flack for. I would assume on my list because my next one is Dominion. So Dominion is an interesting one because I want to start this by saying if someone like had Dominion and said we're gonna play Dominion, and like I don't think I would be disappointed to play it unless it was just the base game again, because I play that one a lot. Like if there was especially an expansion thing, I would still play it again. For me, the biggest thing with Dominion is that I've just played so many deck builders. I've played deck building board games. We've played other card games that are deck building, whether it's like Marvel Champions and Magic the Gathering and all that kind of stuff. That for me, just the pure deck building with like, for sure there's a theme, but it's more just like everyone's doing their own thing and being efficient, whatever, and like you're watching everyone's do their turns and stuff. Like I'm just so past that now that I think that I've played so many other deck builders that like I need something else going on for me to be excited to sit down and like actively play that game. And that doesn't always happen to me in board games. Like it's not just like, oh, I get tired of a mechanic now, I just want there to be more added on.
Right.
But with deck building specifically, because there's been so many cool and interesting ways of integrating stuff, whether it be like integrating it with a board with Clank or like, and I'm gonna struggle now to come up with other examples. We've played so many deck building games that
We've played the Hunger, which I haven't played yet.
Right, and the Hunger as well. I just find that like I'm less excited, and I've cooled a lot on just going and just doing the pure deck building with like the more bland theme, and just I'm doing my own thing, you're doing your own thing, and we're not integrating or interacting more beyond that, besides what we're buying and stuff, and who's buying, like who goes for the estates and everything for his provinces. Beyond that, like I'm just like there's not enough going on with all the players that it's just not as exciting to me anymore.
Okay.
So I still like the game. I would definitely never buy it again to have in my collection. And if, like I said, if I went to someone's place and they were like, I want to play Dominion, and they were just going to take out just the base game, I would play it. There would be a part of me that's like, any chance you want to play something else? You know what I mean? Yeah. But if someone at the same time, someone like was going to introduce me to like any of the new expansions, I probably would be interested just to see like, oh, what cards are in there? Like, does that change it up? Whatever, right? Like maybe there is something in one of the new expansions that shifts it enough that I'm excited to play it again.
Yeah, and I can't even remember. I think you and I only played it together probably like a couple of times, which is weird because I've played the game so many times.
Yeah.
I feel like we should have played it together more. Maybe you just didn't get like a good market setup of cards. No,
I played it a bunch, and I played it on that website. That
you did,
showed me
but whatever,
a bunch
Play Dominion or whatever back. Yeah. Okay. So you've done your due diligence.
Oh yeah, like I've for sure played it at least 20 to 30 times. Like I played it a bunch, and it just I got like less. It was like you. I think after the first like 10 plays, it just gradually became less exciting for me. And I think it was because of starting to play other deck builders and realizing that like even games like El Dorado excite me way more than Dominion, and that is like way less intricate deck building going on, and yet I find it way more exciting because there's something else you're doing with the deck building.
And it's something tangible. You're like, I'm playing my cards because my goal is to get there, rather than just like my goal is to have the most points. It's kind of just this nebulous like, how am I getting the points? I'm buying the point cards and stuff. Yeah. So question, or actually two-part question. First off, do you feel similarly about other deck builders like that are like just deck building, like Hero Realms, Star Realms, that kind of thing? Like, are you kind of past those as well?
Honestly, like Hero Realms is one that, because I haven't played it a lot, like nowhere near as much as Dominion, I could see myself going back and playing it again and being a little bit more excited. But
it's quick setup, small box game. It's not quite the same.
But I did play Hero Realms. I can't remember who it was with. I did play it relatively recently in the last couple months, and I remember leaving that going, you know what? This isn't hitting the same way as it did. Because I bought it because I played your copy. And I remember being like, oh, this is so good.
I loved it when I first played it too, and I've also cooled a bit on Hero Realms.
It's just, I think you're right. I think in some ways, if I'm looking for a deck building fix, I'm looking for a little bit more out of it because of how many are out there, because of my history of like, I do deck building for fun with Marvel Champions. Like I know that's not as a game, but like I'm deck building there. We used to deck build Magic the Gathering. A bunch of games we play have deck building. It's going to be a mechanic that comes up in a lot of games we play going forward, that I think I'm looking for a little bit more out of it than just the very pure, I'm doing my own thing, you're doing yours. How efficient can you get points? Like I think I'm wanting a little bit more out of it. And that's just me.
Yeah. What was the other thing? I wanted to ask you something else about this was, if let's say like Reiner Knizia or Uwe Rosenberg like was designing a deck building game, or is there anything basically, is there anything out there that could make you be interested in a pure deck building game again?
I would try them all.
No, but I mean, but like be excited about.
I think
where you need the board or some other thing that the deck building is
for
doing
me to be excited about a pure deck builder. I would have to like be really invested in the theme, like something about it really excites me, or the artwork or whatever, or have a designer attached to it that I'm like, okay, but I am interested in Knizia's spin on that.
So I was gonna say, so if Reiner Knizia does a Marvel deck building game, you'll play it, but otherwise,
if Reiner Knizia just does a pure deck building game, I'm in. Like fair enough. I'm in to at least to give it its time of day and see if it's good. Right.
Cool. All right.
Dominion.
Fair enough. I'm gonna make you play again someday. Make you change your mind. Okay, number 3 on my list is finally I have an actual box to put on here, which is I took this. The next 3 are all games I took off Dylan's shelf. By the way, these are all games
off my shelf. I didn't even look to see
cooling on all sorts of games you own.
Oh, now I know what one of them is because I looked and it's gone. I wonder if that's what you're grabbing. Yeah. Okay.
It is Teotihuacan, City of Gods. So this is co-designed by. Or no, it's just Danielle Tascini. We were talking about in that video the other day. Okay, not co-designed.
The solo mode did not have a Turchi.
Right. Yeah. So this is a game solo or 1 to 4 players. This is the next one, kind of in the line after Tzolk'in, which you also have and you also introduced me to. So this game, this is a conflicting pick for me because I do still think it's a pretty solid game, and I would still happily play it like multiple times. I would still enjoy it quite a bit. But I think when I compare my first impression that I had this game, I remember when you bought this game and we went over to your place. I remember like we learned it together. We were kind of going through the rules. You had read the rules.
Yep.
I remember we dove into this, and I think part of it was the table presence. Part of it was I had never played, I don't think when I first played this, I don't think I had ever played a game that had, I don't know if this really counts as an official rondel, but like a board that you're going around in circles and the timing of the actions and putting multiple workers. I also hadn't played a whole lot of, or maybe this might even been the first dice placement. Like I think I played this before Voyages of Marco Polo.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that when I played this game, I was like, whoa, I've never seen this before. And there's the track with the Valley of the Dead, and you're building up the pyramid and all this, like, visually, the theme, everything. Like, I was so captured by this game. And we played it. We really, really had a really good first impression.
Yeah.
Playing as 2 players. Then we played it as a 3-player game.
Did we play it back-to-back that time?
I think maybe we did. Maybe we played twice back-to-back with us. Then we played a 3-player game like a couple weeks later. Yeah. I still really liked it. And obviously part of this might have something to do with playing on Board Game Arena, but even the first play that I went, now that it's on Board Game Arena, I went and played it on there again, and I was like, yeah, it's still pretty good, but I've played it since another 5 or 6 times on there, and it's the same thing we've talked about with these other games, where every time I've played it, I've enjoyed it a bit less. Part of it, I think, is that, and I'm going to compare it a little bit to Tzolk'in, even though they're very different games in the way that they play, but Tzolk'in, to me, felt like the more I played it, the more I saw my options opening up, being like, whoa, I haven't done this yet. I haven't done a strategy where I get, rush this type of resource to buy that one building that gets you this advantage, and then I can go on this spot on, like, there's spots on those different wheels that turn in Tzolk'in that you don't even get to certain games. Like, it really feels like when you've done a game of Tzolk'in that there's a lot of things you haven't explored yet. And in Teotihuacan, it feels like a lot of the time you see a lot of what there is to see, and I've seen almost every time the winner is the person who like contributes to the most or a lot to the pyramid. It feels like if you ignore building the pyramid, you just can't win.
Right.
And the decisions, because like the way you get a lot of resources at once is by having all 3 of your dice, like having that 3rd die or 4th die or whatever land on a spot and get like, sometimes it just feels like, well, why would I not go to that spot where all my dice are and get like 4 stone or whatever? Like, why would I go in this other spot and get like a couple of cocoa only? Right. So I just feel like the decisions have become less interesting as I play it, and I feel like maybe I was tricked a bit by the table presence or something. I still like it quite a bit, but it feels like Tzolk'in should be the one that ages worse, that has like, it kind of has a gimmick in a way, right? The rotating wheels. And yet I'm way more intrigued to revisit that than this, even though this doesn't really have the gimmick, but it just feels like the novelty wore off of this a lot quicker than Tzolk'in. So
yeah, I will say
it's still good. I'm just not like eager to play it. I'm not like before I was like, I want my own copy of this game, I'll play it any day, and now I'm just like, it's good.
I would say that I've cooled on it as well, but not like I can tell I like it more than you still. But the biggest thing for me is that I will always prefer Tzolk'in. I think Tzolk'in's a tighter experience, and I think it's just more fun. Like you said, there's more options, and you can approach it a little bit differently, and it's a tougher game, I think, to play. For sure. Whereas, Teotihuacan, it also just is, it's a more complicated setup. There's more, to me, it's more complicated rules for less, for like, there's not enough payoff for the more extra complications and stuff. Yeah. And you're right, like there's things about it, like even as you're describing different areas, I'm like, oh yeah, that's fun, like I want to go back and play that. But at the same time, if I think about all that and I'm like, I'm going to set up one of these games and I'm going to play it, I own both. I would rather set up Tzolk'in. And there's been times where I'm literally thinking of like, I want to introduce one of these games, and ultimately I'm like, but who am I kidding? Like, I want to introduce Tzolk'in. Like, this gimmick actually works. I want people to experience it. I want people to like have to have the thing of like, when do I pull my workers off to take the action? How long do I leave them on and push my luck that way? Like, it for me, the biggest discrepancy or the biggest challenge is this in comparison to Tzolk'in. Like, that's the biggest reason for me. Like, of me cooling on it is just that I don't know when I'm going to suggest this over Tzolk'in, and so maybe it's just a problem with having both in my collection, kind of thing. Yeah,
I think you've nailed it. Even the fact that they're both on Board Game Arena, I have found that's been a thing with me too. Is like, should I go play? I'm like, I'd rather play Tzolk'in instead.
Yeah. But some people do prefer this to Tzolk'in. I think it comes down to play style. And it's funny because I love dice placement. So there's so many things working in its favor here. That
I know. Like, and when the worker ascends and you can get a 4th worker, you get these different abilities and stuff. But it just, so many of the turns are move either 1, 2, or 3 spots and then either collect the resources that are there or pay the cocoa to go, like, or gain some cocoa based on the workers. And it just feels like too many of the turns, they're just like not exciting enough. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair pick.
A lot of things to like about it, but I've definitely cooled on it quite a bit. That is Teotihuacan, City of Gods.
Fair. All right. My next one, I'm guessing you expected this one on the list, but I could be wrong because this one was actually featured in a video I did a long time ago of my top 5 polyomino games of all time. And now it's definitely not in my top 5 polyomino games, and it is not one of my favorite games. And that is New York Zoo.
So yes, I am surprised.
New York Zoo, I recently called. It's no longer in my collection. I sold it. New York Zoo is a good game, but it is one that, like, when I first started playing it, I think I even said to you, like, well, it was in my top 5 polyomino games. Like I said, like, this is one of my favorite polyomino games. Like, I love this game, and I want to introduce it more. And the more that I played it, just like you said, the less I had, like, fond memories of it. And a lot of that just comes down to, I love the race aspect of it. I love that it's a polyomino game where whoever completes their board first wins, because you always have the satisfaction of, I fully completed my board and how efficient was I at this game. And it was a very satisfying finish to that game, and it often was close. So there was the tension built as you went. I love that aspect of it. The animals being placed on the tiles was so cool and novel at the start, but the more that I played that game, the more it just felt like this unnecessary fiddly thing that I was doing that was detracting from the parts of New York Zoo that I liked.
It's just a cumbersome way to manage. It's like an administrative task that you don't want to be stuck with.
Yeah, and like, the essence of what you're doing with them is cool, but in execution, it just felt like the least fun by a long shot aspect of that game. Enough so that every time I played, I was not looking forward to managing and handling that aspect, that I ended up not wanting to play New York Zoo. And I think that that's really what ended up doing. I mean, it doesn't help that it has an awful rule book, and, like, yes, I know the rules, but if I haven't come back to it for a while and I'm looking for, like, one thing, navigating that rule book is just horrible. I really hate that rule book.
And there is some confusing stuff with the way the animals, I don't remember what the rule is, something about where the animal can go back to here, but if you had an animal in this one spot, you can swap it into something else. Like, there
are intricacies like that you have to kind of refer back to, and so teaching that game also ends up being a challenge. There's aspects
like,
of it
it's a step up for a polyomino game, but maybe not, it doesn't feel that, like, the extra satisfaction of having the rules, right? Like,
I would not say it's a bad game. Like, I still think it's a good game, and I still do enjoy it. It was just like, there was no chance in a genre as saturated as polyominoes that I was ever going to suggest it again.
Yeah,
because
that's fair.
And the comparison I made recently in another video was, like, I recently started playing Barron Park again, and realizing how much I forgot I enjoyed Barron Park, and how much more I enjoyed Barron Park compared to New York Zoo now. It was just a big eye-opener in that, like, you know what? In my polyomino games, I don't necessarily want something as fiddly and complex as what's going on. And it's not super complex, but, like, what's going on with the animals, it's not what I want out of a polyomino game, because for me, in my collection, if I'm playing a polyomino game, it is usually, I want a relaxing experience, I want a mellow teach, or I'm straight up introducing a game to, like, you know, a first date, or a person who doesn't play games very often or whatever, and I just want it to be like this, like, fun, like, you know, easily understood experience. And New York Zoo is not fitting pretty much any of those boxes anymore.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
it has incredible table presence. The meeples, it's a really, really nice production.
Gorgeous
but
game, and honestly, one of the tiles, the actual polyomino tiles, one of the most satisfying, like, feels of those. I don't know what it is. I don't know how they built them, but they are, like, solid polyomino tiles that feel really good as you place them together.
Definitely.
So it does have some great aspects to it, but for me, it just
But one issue, all the tiles being different shades of green, like 5 different shades of green.
Oh man,
light green, slightly darker green.
You're right.
Medium green,
you're right.
Slightly medium dark green, dark green.
You're absolutely right.
Come on.
Yeah, they really stretch green there. But so anyways, that's New York Zoo. It's one of the ones I've cooled on the most, and that's why I did get rid of it. But I would still be open to playing it in the future, and I do still think it's a solid experience. It's just not for me anymore.
Cool. Yeah, I especially didn't enjoy when I played it as a 4-player game. I think it took like an hour and a half, and for that, like, relatively not complex polyomino game, I think an hour and a half is too long, especially when you're, like, the 75% of the time is downtime watching other players. But
fair.
Good pick, New York Zoo. All right, next on my list here is...
This is another one of mine?
Yes.
But I haven't noticed you took off my shelf.
Well, I have the app. I just don't have the physical version.
Okay.
That is Doppelt So
wow.
Clever.
I didn't realize you cooled on this. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Buckle up.
But here's the thing. So when we did our top 50 of all time last year, this was, I think, number 49. I think it just barely made the list. And I remember you even asked me at the time in the video, you're like, wait, so this is your favorite roll and write? And at the time it was. It was ahead of Welcome 2. I would say it was probably my number 2 at the time.
Yeah.
Since we did that top 50, and I've talked about this game in other videos as well, I've gone back to try and play it a couple times, and my opinion really has changed the game. But it's not the game's fault. It's basically my own fault for playing the
it
hell
so
out of
much.
this game on the app during the pandemic at the, like April 2020. You know, I was like off work at home, whatever. I remember downloading the app. I played so much of this game, and not only that, but when it's a game like this that's a roll and write, that's a kind of like beat your own high score that has a good solo mode. Once I started getting really high scores, even playing solo, I felt like there was points where I had less incentive to go back, because once you get a certain score, it's really hard to get up there again, kind of thing, right? And then you keep playing and playing and playing, and if you play 10, 20 times in a row and you're getting nowhere near that high score, do you really think you're going to be able to beat that high score, or are you just playing for the fun now, kind of thing? And that's really why I've cooled on it, is that I don't think I'm going to be able to get near my high score anytime soon again. And I've enjoyed this playing this most solo on the app. And since then, in the last year or so, I've probably played this a couple times with the physical version. And whenever I'm playing with other people, whether I win, lose, whatever, I just find I'm not invested in like whether I'm beating the other players or not. All I'm caring about is like my own score.
Oh, interesting.
So even if I won a game, if the score that I won with is like 150 points lower than what my high score was, I feel like I played poorly. I'm like, I can do better than this. I've scored well over this many, many times before. So I just feel like I don't have much draw to go back to it solo, because I'm probably not going to reach the high score. And again, part of it is that I've played this like well over 100 times now.
Right.
So yeah, it's just a matter of I've played it to death kind of thing. But I'm still like, I haven't cooled on the other ones in the series as much, just because there's more for me to explore in those. Whereas this one, I've played it so much.
It's just games that use a high score as one of their main motivating factors to come back, or is like an aspect of it that is supposed to be like largely why you're playing it, are just tough to have longevity, because eventually you figure out the game, and even if it's been a while since you've had that high score, if you remember you hit this like one of the highest achievable scores, like where is your incentive to come back, and like if you're not even ever going to achieve it again, right? It's interesting that you say that when you play with other people that you're still focused on your high score, because me, just in general, across board games, across video games, everything, I like rarely ever encounter a game where I care about my high score and where I rank. I've just never quite had that mentality with even with arcade games and everything. Like I can think of like one time when I got really into like the newest Switch version of Mario Tennis, where I was like trying to climb like the Canadian rankings, and I think I was like high, but like it's rare that happens to me with a game. And so when I play with actual people around the table, that's when it's the most refreshing and engaging for me, because I really don't care about how good my score is. I'm just doing it in comparison to like the people around the table, right? And I don't even remember like what score I'm trying to achieve of my own. And I have played the app a lot too, but for some reason there's that differentiation between like the way we approach a high score. But yeah, I totally get it. Like I've cooled on a little bit too. For me, what's going to always keep it at like a certain level is that it's always just such an easy game to introduce to people who don't play games very often. And I usually do enjoy playing with them for the first time and seeing them like get a good roll, whatever. So I feel like there's a people say there's a ceiling to something I can hit. There's a floor on how much I can cool, because it'll always land that way in my collection. But I can understand like if you play it that much and you hit the high score, like what's drawing you back? Why go play it again?
Yeah,
right?
And that's if I hadn't played it so much solo, because this is the only game I can think of, or this and the other clever game where like a high score is something that I remember and I'm targeting to beat, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think part of it too is that I don't like playing these games with more than 2 players. I think there's way too much depth. The last couple times I played this with 4 players, I think it took almost an hour, and like so much of it was just sitting watching other people take their turns.
Right. That's
and
true.
To play it as a 2-player game, which I think is the best count, anyone I'm playing with has played this like nowhere near the amount that I have, so I always feel bad playing this as a 2-player game with someone when I have like 150 games under my belt. So it just sits in a weird spot. I think it's an excellent game, but I've just played it to death. Yeah, I just felt so clever.
All right, my last one, which is probably, I put it here because I'm pretty sure it's the biggest discrepancy, and I will, even though Nidavellir is the only one I like probably don't like, I still like this game, but I like it a lot less than when I first talked about it. So I talked about this game in a comparison video early on, and I said I ranked both games very very close. I think there's a huge gap now between them, which is why I'm putting it here. And that is Castles of Tuscany. So a lot of why this is on this list in this spot is because of how much I have played Castles of Burgundy since, and like rekindled my I always loved it, but like even rekindled and that fire even more, is that it's hard for me to go back to Castles of Tuscany now and not just feel like, why am I not playing Burgundy? It is a streamlined version in many ways of Burgundy. It does some cool stuff with the scoring that is really present in Burgundy. It's represented a different way with this wheel here, where like you want to try to get a lot of points early on in the game and benefit from it. It does a lot of cool stuff, and it is cool to have this more like, you know, streamlined, different approach to the Burgundy formula. But for me, because I can play a game of Burgundy now pretty quickly, especially at 2 players, and especially if you're playing on BGA, all the reasons I would have originally said to go to Tuscany will still apply if maybe you haven't played Burgundy or you just like consistently just want a streamlined approach. But I just think that in every single facet, even though this is still good, Burgundy's better. And so it's really hard as I see that gap, you know, widening for me to have incentive to ever want to come back and play it. So I've cooled out of necessity just because of how much I love Burgundy. Like in many ways, I feel like it would be the same thing for you if and I'm guessing here because you haven't played it, but like you could play Caverna and you could like it, but if you own both in your collection and with how much you love Agricola, would you feel like when you're playing Caverna, you're just like, really, this is just making me feel like I want to go play Agricola? You know what I mean? Like it's less because this game is bad and more just because I happen to be someone who just is falling more and more in love with Burgundy the more I play it. But like,
so the discrepancy is widening the more you play your preferred game.
I think I said in that comparison video, like I will always own both because it's nice to have the option to be like, oh, we want to play a shorter experience, like, or a streamlined, like, I'll play Tuscany. I feel like now I'm close to just getting rid of Tuscany because I don't even want to have the option where someone's like, well, let's just play Tuscany instead, because I'm like, no, Burgundy's better. Let's play Burgundy.
I thought you... Oh, never mind. For some reason, I thought you had gotten rid of this already, or were going to get rid of it.
No, I think
Did
just
you not put it in a video.
No,
saying
I
you're getting rid of it?
haven't.
Oh,
It's just I'm getting close to getting rid of it. I think I considered it for a calling video. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm not ready to get rid of it.
Okay.
But I think I'm getting closer just because I don't know when I'm going to suggest it. I know you have different. You've played this less, but I know you've had different experiences with it. Like in the sense
only
you
played
like
it once.
More.
I don't know if I like it more than Burgundy.
No, like it more than me.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Yes, but I just like, it's tough for me. Like it's a different version of one of my favorite games, and like it was neat and novel to see one of my favorite games done in a new light, and I enjoyed it. But yeah, like why would I go back to it now? I just want to play Burgundy.
That's fair.
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
I did like the way that the points, you can accumulate the points that kind of scale over from round to round, and it just is interesting the fact that it uses cards primarily rather than dice. So the way that it handles randomness is like, it's still, there's randomness, but you're drawing from something, whereas a die you can roll the same value over and over. So I think this one gives you a little more flexibility in that regard. Like I think there's like wild stuff, and you can pick your different little abilities and stuff. So there's cool stuff. Like honestly, I want to play it again. Even just talking about it now, I'm like, I remember being impressed by it. Like I didn't think I was going to enjoy it much when we played it. And I thought that was a pretty good game.
Yeah, it's still a good game. It just the biggest turning point, if you're wondering, was when the tournament for Castles of Burgundy was run in our Discord. Playing that many games of Burgundy with that many different play styles with people who are playing it really well made me appreciate Burgundy even more than I already did, just from seeing how much flexibility there was and how much differentiation there was in boards, and how now if I get a board, I approach the game very differently just knowing which board I'm seeing. Like it's really because I played
and
so
what
much
your
Burgundy.
Opponents are doing and stuff.
Burgundy's just a great game. Wait until you see it somehow climb from its very high spot in my top 50 this year. Somehow it's going to get a higher spot. See where it goes, but that is Castles of Tuscany.
Nice pick. I didn't see that one coming, but your reasoning all makes sense. All right, so last one on my list is one that I think you're going to be disappointed to see here.
Oh no, what is it?
7 Wonders Duel.
Well, to be fair, I never really thought you were like in love with it from the start or anything. I thought you enjoyed it.
And it's weird. The very first time I played it with you, I think I just thought it was like okay.
Yeah.
And then I didn't play it again for a long time, and then I don't know how much time had gone by. I played it again. This is obviously the 2-player version of 7 Wonders. And 7 Wonders, the original, the 7-player game, was like one of my favorite and one of my very first games that got me into the hobby. So this, I think maybe that was why I like maybe put up a shield against this the first time you showed me. It was like, oh no, it's not as good as the original.
Right.
A couple of years went by, played it again, and there was a point where I like truly loved this game when you showed it to me. And then I was like, oh, wait a sec, it's on Board Game Arena. Maybe I'll go play it on there. I think I got in like 20 or 30 games in like this matter of 2-3 days probably.
I think I did the same thing.
And I specifically remember like messaging you too and saying like, man, 7 Wonders Duel is like a lot better than I remember. Like it's a really good game.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened. It was like up those 20, 25, 30 plays or so, I was like, my enjoyment was increasing. And then all of a sudden, there was just one day where I noticed, like, hey, I haven't played Seven Wonders Duel in a while. I just, like, there wasn't a conscious decision, like, I'm going to stop playing it on there. I just stopped having the desire to, like, queue up games. And then I kind of forced myself to get back into it, tried playing a couple times. Then, like you said, we had the tournament in the Discord for Seven Wonders Duel. Mm-hmm. And that was where it almost hit me that, like, even on Board Game Arena, where it's doing the calculations for me, and all that, the more I played the game, the less, and it's probably a common theme with a lot of the games that I've talked about here and other videos before, but it felt like the decisions became more obvious the longer the game goes on.
Right.
And because of the alternate win conditions and stuff, like, it's really interesting that you can win with science and win with military and do all these things, but a lot of the time when you go for that route, I've found that there gets a point in the game where you're not going to win by points, and now you're like, if you're already committed to military, it's like, you either have to go for that military win, otherwise you just have to accept that you're going to lose because there's no way you're going to make up the points.
Yeah.
And same with science. It's like, I have 5 symbols or whatever. Like, why would I do anything other than going for the 6th symbol to get the science? So sometimes it feels like at a certain point in the first, second age, your path is almost like laid out for you. And it's like, well, now that I have all these blue cards that are going to build into other blue cards, well, of course I'm going to take the free blue cards. And, you know, so it feels like any path you go down, it's kind of pushing you further down that path. And then I thought about playing the physical version, and the idea of doing the calculations of all the cards and the pyramid and setting up the pyramid, I just thought, if I already have cooled on it this much on Board Game Arena, I don't know if I'm going to want to play the physical version or like going to be all that excited to play something that has that much setup. And it's just that 2-player only games are a very crowded field. Yeah. And when I was like at my peak of enjoyment with this game, I remember thinking at one point, like, this is one of my favorite 2-player games right now. And now that I think about it, if I was going to pick like my top 10 2-player only games, like, this wouldn't make the top 10. Wow. I don't even know if it would make the top 15. Like, that's wild. I just keep thinking of so many other games that I enjoy more than it, and it's weird to me that it's had this much of a fall from me thinking like this is one of the best 2-player games I've played to now like there are so many more 2-player games I would rather play over it, and the fact that I enjoy the BGA version so much more because of how everything's automated. So
yeah, like, it's funny because, like, for me, I also played it like, 20, 30, 40 times during the pandemic. It felt like I'm just constantly queuing up games, and then the tournament, and it's kind of the same thing as Burgundy. Like, it made me appreciate it more as I got into the comfortable area of being like, I can be mean in this game now because I know how to be mean. I know how to block someone. I know how to
cards.
I know which wonders to take, and I know when to do my my
double turn
and stuff. Like, doing all that was super fun. And I even though I hear what you're saying about, like, sometimes the which victory you're going for being obvious, there were times where I'm essentially feigning going for one just to make the opponent feel they have to now jump in and prevent me, so they start taking some science, and that ends up getting me opportunities to be like, now I can grab some blues, and so I can use that as almost just a way, like, to put pressure, to pull them away, to then go back over here, which pulls them over there. And, like, even when I haven't won, it's just felt fun, and I've had a lot of enjoyment of watching someone have to be like, oh, that now he's going for military, I need to push that. Oh, now he's going for science, I need to do this. Like, there was just enough going on that, like, I feel like I know enough about how it plays that when I get in, I have enough of a strategy that it's just really fun for me to try to execute that. And when I lose, it feels like, they outplayed me, which was, I don't know. For me, it is, I've also hit a ground level on it where I don't think that, even if I tire of it because I played it a lot, it's not because it's not because I'm cooling on it. It's just like, I've played too much of this, I need to go gravitate to something else now. There's a floor in where my enjoyment's going to stop because I just really, really enjoy it.
That's fair.
But I hear what you're saying. Like, it's one of those games where I can tell as I'm playing is not for everyone. Even the aspect of, sometimes I've had games decided on luck where, like, you draw a card and what happens to flip over is like the 3 shields and that wins them the game or something like that. That's frustrating at times, but regardless of those things, I just still really enjoy it. And then having options to, like, play expansions to, like, shake things up.
Yeah,
really
well,
nice,
and that's what I was gonna say is I think I've tried Pantheon and Agora only once each, and I enjoyed what they both did. I can't remember which I liked more, or if I think it's better than the base game or whatever. Yeah. So maybe that's part of you enjoying it more. Like, you've definitely played the expansions more than me, so maybe that's what I need to kind of breathe some new life into this and get back to playing it a little bit. But
it does kill me a little bit, but that's okay.
I know, and I felt bad but like, when I thought about it, truly, it's only because of how high my opinion was of it before. Yeah. It's not like I think it's a bad game. I think it's still a very solid game, and I would. There's not a lot of, like, I wouldn't recommend it above tons of other 2-player games necessarily, but I know a lot of people who would really like this game, and I think it is fairly well designed, but Just something about it doesn't do it for me anymore. It's
right.
really cool.
I guess I can accept that.
I know it's. I think last time we did our 2-player games, it was your number 1 2-player game, right?
Yeah, I mean, in my top 50, I think it's number 5 or 6 last week. Last week of the list.
Here I am saying
trashing it. You're just doing this in retaliation for my Race to the Galaxy experiences.
Well, no, I knew Race to the Galaxy and Agricola wouldn't make it in here because you never had respect for those games in the first place.
Wow. And with that, shots fired moment. Those are the games we've cooled on. This is a really interesting topic, so we would love to hear in the comments. Like, let us know which games you started off loving and now you don't like. Or you started off loving and you only like a little bit now. Like, just tell us which games you've cooled on. I think it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, and tell us why.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we are going to in the future do the reverse, where we talk about the games that we started off not liking or not feeling, being lukewarm on, and then all of a sudden it did grow over time.
Yeah, the games that grew on us.
Because I think that's even more interesting in some ways, because it takes a very specific situation to like not enjoy a game and then all of a sudden be like, now I do.
Yeah, to made up your mind and then have to be open-minded to it again and say like, hey, actually, maybe now that I play it that way.
And I already know which game's going to be number 1 on my list for that, and you might know what it is. I'm not going to say it, but start guessing now which game is going to be number 1, because I don't think it's going to change. Like, I've known which game is like etched into that list as soon as you said it. So start ruminating, start trying to figure out if you can guess what number 1 is. But anyways, thank you so much for watching and for joining us in this video, and we will see you next time.